New protests have erupted in St. Louis after another police shooting led to the death of an 18-year-old by the name of Vonderick Myers. Now, this case is actually very different from the Michael Brown case. However, people are drawing parallels to the Michael Brown case. So the way that it all went down, according to Reuters, is that the dead man was one of 3 people who fled after being approached by the officer, a 6-year veteran of the department who was working for a private security company, St. Louis Metropolitan Police Chief Sam Dotson said. Now, the police official who fired the shots has not been identified, but as you guys know, as you heard me just say, we now know who the victim is, Vonderick Myers. Also, as the officer approached, according to reports, they got into a struggle. They ended up in a gangway, at which time the young man pulled a weapon and shots were fired. The officer returned fire, and unfortunately, the young man was killed. So let's get into some more details. Police said the 18-year-old was armed and fired 3 shots while he was being chased by the officer, and they had recovered a gun at the scene. So he was armed, according to the evidence that the police allege they have, okay? By early Thursday morning, investigators had recovered bullet casings from 2 guns, as well as a 9mm Ruger, believed to have belonged to the man, okay? Ruger, okay. So, just to give you some more information, the officer fired a total of 17 shots, okay? But we are unsure of how many of those shots actually hit the 18-year-old.
Enough of them to kill him.
Yeah.
And now we got witnesses not witnesses, but people in the community saying, that were his friends, by the way, saying.
And his family members.
Right, that are saying, no, it wasn't a gun, he had a sandwich with him. Okay. Except there is a gun at the scene. So now, look, in all these cases, you haven't gone to trial, all this evidence has not been submitted through the court process so that you can verify it, etc. So in the first day that you cover the story, you do the best you can with the facts that you have. So for example, in the case of Michael Brown, we were outraged because a lot of witnesses that were there said his hands were up in the air, right? And it looked like, and he did not have a gun, and all these pieces of evidence lined up to say, that seems really questionable. In this case, yes, it's the cops saying it, so you'd have to go through the process to make sure they're not lying, they didn't plant the gun, yada yada, all the different things. But based on what we know so far, I don't see it as outrageous at all.
Yeah.
The kid, and he's 18 years old, that's why I call him a kid, appears to have shot at the cops. They have the gun, they have bullets that were fired that are not from the police officer's weapon, and the cop shot back. Apparently, even according to the police report, the kid's gun jammed at one point after he fired 3 shots, and the cop kept shooting and he fired 17 shots.
Right.
But then you're really nitpicking, like, oh, when did it jam? Should he have kept shooting afterwards, etc.? I mean, somebody's shooting at you, you don't ask questions.
I can understand why the community in the area is beyond frustrated with police. They're tired of being profiled, they're tired of being harassed by police officials, and they don't trust the cops.
Yeah,
but
that's the main thing.
Yes, and at the same time, I understand that, right? I would feel the exact same way. But at the same time, it's irresponsible to immediately draw parallels between the Michael Brown shooting and this shooting.
Right.
If there is proof that this 18-year-old had a gun, this is completely different. He was armed, shots were fired. I did a little background investigation on this 18-year-old, and look, this isn't related to the case, but I think it's relevant. You know, he was out on bond because he had unlawful ownership of a gun. He had a criminal record, and so it's not like the Michael Brown case where you're dealing with an unarmed 18-year-old who was just walking along the street and then things needlessly escalated to the point where he was killed.
As we say in every story, you got to look at the context. So one of the pieces of context here is that given how much scrutiny the entire area is under, I find it incredibly unlikely that the cops are going to start planting evidence and manufacturing stuff in the middle of that scrutiny.
Yeah.
So it's not like that never happens. It happens plenty of times, and I can see eyebrows raised in different circumstances. But boy, here it would be surprising, right? And again, you go through the process. You don't just trust what the cops say, as the final word. But right now, it looks like it was a justifiable shooting. And by the way, there were protests last night when the news broke. They heard of a shooting, people went and protested. And then there was some serious, they and the cops showed restraint. They didn't break up the protest, even though one of the cop cars was apparently, one of the windows were smashed.
One of the cop cars had smashed windows. Another cop car was being attacked by protesters, but I don't think any damage was caused to it.
But now that a lot of the facts are out, there are no protests today.
Yep.
So also be fair to the people in town who have a lot of right to be skeptical of the cops.
Of course.
They hear another black kid got shot. They get upset, they protest, and then next day they go, oh, okay, this is not like the Michael Brown case. It appears.